The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the series premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, called Strange New Worlds, funny enough. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Folks, be sure to get your very own Secrets of Star Trek t-shirt by visiting sqpn.com/merch, and you can see Father Cory, Jimmy, and I as I hang off the end of the Starship Enterprise. That's especially appropriate as we're starting with Strange New Worlds, and the Enterprise has returned to Star Trek. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy, called The Secrets of Technology. Find that wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/technology.
So you could listen to that and learn how a replicator works. It's a 3D food printer.
Exactly. And how transporters are murder machines. Actually, that's more Mysterious Worlds venue. But let's go right into it. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of this episode?
Enterprise has been undergoing repair work for 3 months, and in that time, Captain Pike has been holed up in Montana, licking his wounds from the vision he saw of the moment in his future where he gets crippled. But Admiral Robert April recalls him to service and sends the Enterprise to a planet where Number 1 was on a first contact mission that has gone wrong. Meanwhile, on Vulcan, Spock gets engaged to T'Pring, but Pike recalls him to duty. When they get to the planet, they discover that the first contact ship is there, but its super small crew of just 3 people is missing. The trigger for first contact is detecting a warp signature, but it turns out that the people on the planet haven't built a warp drive, but a warp bomb to destroy a rival faction on the planet. So they're not qualified for first contact. To make matters worse, it turns out that they figured out how to build the warp bomb by using telescopes to observe events in the 2nd season of Star Trek Discovery, confirming once again the massive damage that Discovery has done to the Star Trek franchise. Spock, Picard, and the new security officer, La'an Noonien Singh, beam down and rescue Number 1 and her 2 crewmates. Pike then decides to break General Order Number 1 by approaching the leader of the pre-warp civilization that has the bomb. Pike wants to convince her to give up war and negotiate with the rival faction, but the leader says no, that whoever has the bigger stick wins, and now she has the bigger stick because of the warp bomb. Pike then says, not so fast. Actually, I have the bigger stick. And then he extra super duper breaks the Prime Directive by ordering the Enterprise to come down into the atmosphere in a show of superior strength. He then makes a speech at a summit meeting between the 2 leaders, shows them home videos of the horrors that Earth went through, and manages to convince them to give up war and join the Federation. We then get a montage showing the aliens embracing Pike's message. Back at Starbase 1, Admiral April has used a technicality to get our heroes off the hook for their extra super chocolate fudgy violation of the Prime Directive. And we conclude with new crew members being introduced and the Enterprise warping off on its 5-year mission. The end.
That's a lot. And this episode picks up, as you mentioned, Jimmy, picks up from things that had happened in Discovery. So it's sort of, we get that continuity. And if you hadn't watched Discovery 2nd season, it might have been unclear about what Pike was going on about at the beginning of this episode, especially, and his, moral quandary throughout, or not moral, but his internal conflict,
existential conflict. Yeah. But they show us lots of flashbacks, so you can kind of get the idea, even if you didn't see it or the original series.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So that is good. I wanted to mention one thing that I thought was kind of interesting that isn't actually part of the episode, but right at the beginning is they have this new teaser clip that they're doing for Star Trek shows, sort of like a lot of like the MCU does and Star Wars does, I thought it was kind of an interesting little addition that they're making. And it's sort of I think the idea is they're wanting to tie together the Star Trek universe, this cinematic universe.
It's a branding. It's a branding thing. It's just like Star Wars does. Star Wars has their little opening thing where they show all the helmets. It's the same basic idea.
Yeah. It's more time wasting. It's like when you put in a DVD, you first got to, not only do you have to watch the "Don't pirate this DVD" message, but you've got to watch all of this branding before you get to what you're here for. And it's the same thing now with streaming services. I've noticed a glitch I watch these new Star Trek series on Amazon through a subscription to Paramount Plus, and before every time, no matter how old the episode is or what series it belongs to now, I have to watch all this branding before I get to see the series. And there's a malfunction in the programming these days where it's got to show me the Paramount branding twice before every episode. And now it's just like one more piece of branding. Just show me the story, okay? I'm paying for it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, they're just taking the theater model. I went to see the movie Father Stu last week, and there were the 6 or 8 trailers, there were commercial after commercial after commercial, including for Strange New Worlds, by the way. So, I mean, it's just like they're following that model that they know they can load in all this advertising before you actually get to the show.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a little thing just to throw in there. I was interested in the cold open that they did for this episode, which is we have the voiceover talking about encountering UFOs, or what we would call today UAPs, and how these aliens of this planet Kylie, which is kind of a funny name, the planet Kylie, where they see the Federation starship in their atmosphere, and it's their encounter with aliens for the first time when it's being presented in that. I just thought it was kind of funny, given how in our real world we're seeing the New York Times reporting the ATIP videos of gun camera videos, and it's the sort of thing, seeing it from their point of view. I just thought it was kind of funny to kind of twist it like that. And so first contact with aliens.
They also fake us out, making it look like this could be Earth in the early 21st century, because you see these military uniforms and you're seeing everyone from behind. And it's not until one of the aliens turns around and you see, on Star Trek, they have either aliens with weird foreheads or aliens with spots. And today we've got aliens with weird foreheads with spots on them.
Spotted foreheads. Yep.
Well, and the technology definitely looked like, something you might see a command bunker in today's world, with the big LCD display and the little monitors and everything. It looked like something you could potentially see contemporaneous to today.
Yeah, the tech for the planet called Kylie is about 21st century Earth.
Kylie 279.
279, thank you. Yeah.
I don't know what the Kylians call themselves.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that.
Yeah, I love that when in Star Trek, everyone's name is whatever the people from Earth called them. Then we cut to Pike in Bear Creek, Montana. Father, how far is Bear Creek a real place, and how far is it from you?
It is a real place. It's about 290 miles by the road, about 300 miles by road. But this week I have my priest retreat. So by the time you hear this, I will be on retreat near Red Lodge, Montana, and will be 10 miles from Bear Creek. So I will have to go scout it out. I don't remember any windmills there, though, the wind generators, but could be.
Yeah, there's a wind farm there in Pike's Day. Yeah, and lots of snow.
I saw someone on our Discord kind of complaining, like the idea that why would they have wind farms in the 24th century?
You have antimatter reactors.
Maybe it's for nostalgia. Like we have Roman aqueducts still,
That's the Bear Creek Historic Wind Farm. Who knows?
Killing birds
like the train
for
there.
Centuries.
I mean, it looked like the train there. I mean, it looked like that part of Montana. So
it would be interesting. So we're told it's Stargate 1739 at this point, although later on...
Star date. I know, yeah. And later on, the star date is 2259. And it's like, why is there a massive jump of 500 star dates in a single episode?
I wonder if there used to be, back a long time ago, a speculation that star dates were both location and time dependent.
Yeah, Gene Roddenberry made that nonsense up, and I actually challenged him on it. Yeah, he was in the 70s. He was doing a lecture tour to make money, and he was going to college towns and lecturing on Star Trek. And as a kid, I went and saw him, and during the question period, I had read his nonsense explanation that star dates are dependent on where you are in the galaxy and how fast you're moving and stuff. And I came up with an alternative system that was much better and was based on the fact that stars actually rotate. So they have star days. And I sketched the idea briefly in the question period, and he gave me his business card to correspond with him later about.
Oh, funny.
Cool.
Hey, that's a funny little thing. I actually got Gene Roddenberry's business card once too. Someone gave to me, so it's kind of funny. It was actually kind of cool. That the Enterprise on it.
Was it the blue one with the Norway Productions on it?
I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time. It's like at least 30 years since I saw it last. But yeah, I had the Enterprise on it, so it might have been a different card.
Yeah, mine didn't. It just said Norway Productions on it, and it had kind of it was blue and had a blue background and stuff.
Oh, cool.
I feel left out. I don't have any.
I wish I had it now. I mean, that thing probably worth something.
Well, use the replicator on your desk next to your computer to print you one.
That's right. I'll have to download the. And anyway, Pike is there in his gorgeous lodge in its winter time.
I thought you were going to mention the gorgeous woman. Okay.
Well, it's
sure.
with the gorgeous one. Yes. I'm married, so I'm mainly looking at the lodge. But although I did notice there was a gorgeous woman there. Andy's watching The Day the Earth Stood Still on his big screen TV on the wall, which was fun.
While making breakfast.
Yep. Yeah, I like the fact that he is apparently a classic sci-fi fan. He's got that awesome beard going on, which I wish he kind of kept the rest of the episode, you know.
Yeah, I know. Spock looked better with a beard too. Although I'll tell you that, you know, Pike needed to comb his. They were making him. They were making him deliberately look disheveled.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I can understand waking up, but okay. You got a gorgeous woman over. Comb your beard, okay?
Right. She's
apparently going for the. He's going for the Montana man out in the boonies. You know, that's what he's going for.
Grizzly Adams thing going on there. So apparently she's a captain.
We don't learn her first name. Her name is Captain Bettel.
Right. And he's thinking about leaving Starfleet, retiring after his prophecy of his future, and that's going to be a big theme in this episode and probably through the season. Is when you know that your death is coming, when you've got advanced knowledge of how or death or virtually a death, if you know how and I think he knows basically when.
Yeah, he said it's a little under a decade from now.
What do you do? How do you deal with that? I mean, that isn't, like you said, an existential crisis. Do I run from it?
You do what we all do. Pretend it's not going to happen and get on with life.
Right. Well, in fact, that comes up. Where did that come up? It came up in something else. I don't know if it was in Picard or somewhere else where someone, or was it this one where you just pretend that, you know, you go on. You just, we all pretend to the very last second that we're going to live forever.
Because otherwise, why feel bad? If it's not going to change, then you may as well not torture yourself with it before it gets there. So just ignore it and do what you need to do.
Right.
Well, because there's the issue too of you know, being melancholy. You know, he's melancholy about it and stuff. You know, and of course, you know, it's going to affect you and you're going to be melancholy. It's like, well, I know people that probably, if they knew exactly when they were going to die, they're going to live it up until then.
Right. Eat, drink, and be merry.
You know, yeah. I mean, it's like, because they know they ain't going to have to worry about dying from, you know, an accident or whatever, because they know exactly how it's going to happen. So, hey, let's have fun.
I mean, there's a Christian concept of memento mori, right? Like, we remember you are mortal. You are going to die someday. So live as if today is your last day. Live as if you know.
Well, yeah, up to a point, Lord Copper. I mean, we shouldn't be torturing ourselves with the thought of death. But yes, we should be making moral decisions based on the fact that we're mortal.
Sure.
Exactly.
Right. Because you never know. Because today could be your last day. You know, the proverbial bus could be coming for you tomorrow. So, I think we could talk more about that as we go on. But as you mentioned, number one was on that mission to that new planet, Kylie, 279, And on the ship was called the USS Archer, a clear reference to Jonathan Archer from Enterprise.
And people, when they showed it briefly on the screen, people may have been surprised because it's got the recognizable saucer section, but it has only one warp engine that is mounted underneath the saucer section. And that's a design that was originally introduced in the Starfleet Technical Manual back in the 70s for what's called a Scout class ship.
Yep.
But Scout class ships are still the size of the Enterprise in terms of their length and width and stuff, even though they got one warp engine and no secondary hull. And like, why is there only 3 people on this thing? That's super convenient.
According to the Starfleet Technical Manual, the Hermes class starship has a crew complement of 20 officers and 175 crew.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have 3 people on board. Come on. So I had one of the original copies of that. Speaking of having
me too.
rare things.
Still got it.
Yeah, I love that thing. So Starfleet wants Pike to go, but he's reluctant. Not sure why he's got to be the one. I mean, obviously he would have a reason to go because his number 1 is out there, Una, but who gets a last name, by the way, Chin Riley.
Yeah. Una Chin Riley is number 1's full name now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Admiral April had a special reason. I mean, it could just be he wants Pike back in service. That he knows his friend is dithering, and so he's given him a kick in the butt to get him back in the captain's chair and get him active again, so he's not stewing and brooding about should I leave Starfleet.
Right.
Yeah. That would be my guess. Incidentally, they established, so for people who may not know who Robert April is, Robert April was the original captain of the Enterprise on its first 5-year mission before Pike. And they've race swapped him.
Yes.
Because April appears as a Commodore in the animated series, and he also appears once, I think, on screen in live action.
In Discovery.
Okay. But now he's a black dude, which is fine, but why? You know, I mean, you already established him. You could have some other, if you want a black admiral, that's fine, but why make him Robert April? You know, just give him a different name. Yeah.
I mean, I guess they wanted to make that connection, like that Pike was his first officer or something.
It's checking a woke tick box is all it is. It's you know, we want the first captain to be black. Okay, well, fine, whatever. But you know, there's no real reason for this other than woke virtue signaling on the part of the TV show makers.
Yeah, the animated series episode was called "The Counterclock Incident." By the way, just in case anyone's interested in going to look that up.
I'm more open to like race and gender swaps if you're rebooting a series. You know, like when they rebooted Battlestar Galactica, I had no problem with Starbuck being a woman now.
And Boomer. Yep.
Right. And Boomer. Yeah, being a woman now. So, but when you're not doing a reboot, when you're in the same continuity, it's a little more like, why?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. There are a lot of nods, by the way, to original series in this. We'll get to them as we go through, but it's kind of fun. So you mentioned Spock and T'Pring. Spock and T'Pring are on a date, and I guess he's thinking that she's called him. She's asked him to go out to dinner because they're getting engaged. I think that's the context is he's waiting for her. Maybe on Vulcan, the women ask the men.
Yeah, this is also a little continuity bending because when T'Pring was originally introduced, it was indicated that this was an arranged marriage, and that they were already married and so forth, and I think they followed up on that in the animated series, establishing that Spock and T'Pring were like bonded in a ceremony when they were children.
I think they mentioned that in this, though, that they're betrothed as children. But that's a promise to future engagement. So betrothed, engaged, and married. And then by the time we get to Amok Time in the original series, the marriage has occurred, I think. Or was that the finalization of the marriage, like we have I don't know, you know this better, Jimmy, but in the scripture where Mary and Joseph were betrothed but not yet married, that
was customary in Jewish culture. You paid the bride price, or the mohar, like a year. You purchased the bride and you're engaged, or legally you're married, but we don't have a word for this state in English, so it's often just called betrothed, but it is legal marriage because it has to be dissolved by divorce, and like you wait a year before you begin cohabiting.
Okay.
And during the year, the husband like prepares a place for the bride. You know, he like builds a house or whatever he needs to.
Okay. So I figured it was something like that, but it wasn't clear, and I think they could have done a better job of making that clear what that relationship is there.
Yeah, because he mentioned that he had made, he's talked about he had to respond to Pike because he had vows that he had made, and she's like, "You means the one you just made?"
Right.
So and that made it sound like this was the actual marriage point instead of like a formal engagement or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if they're technically married or not. They may be. But if so, it was a pretty informal marriage. It just happened at a restaurant. Yeah. So Spock notes that they're meeting on the anniversary of some courtship thing. And T'Pring finally proposes, and he says, "I was beginning to think you would never ask." And then I love how they kiss, and the waiter comes over and says, "I'm sorry, I have to ask you to do that somewhere else." So like no public displays of affection on Vulcan.
Get a room.
And I love T'Pring's follow-up line after the waiter says, "I have to ask you to do that somewhere else." She says, "What an excellent idea."
I think that I like the fact that they're really establishing Vulcans are not emotionless. They just don't display them outwardly in excessively. So I think I like that better than what we've gotten before, which is as if Vulcans have no actual emotions.
Yeah. Also, Spock is not Ponfard at the moment.
No.
But he's clearly fully functional because we have Matrimonius interruptus when Pike gets on the phone.
Yeah, not sure we needed a Vulcan love scene. I could have done without that.
Well, we didn't quite get it. We were getting there though.
We were still in the warm-up phase, so to speak.
We did precipitate actually kind of a funny line where Pike comes on the screen and he says, "Spock, are you naked?" No, Captain. This is why video calls are bad.
I like T'Pring's. He was about to be.
Right. Yeah.
And she says it's a special night, so maybe that was their honeymoon, their matrimonial night, I guess. So.
Yeah. And she knew Chris because she said, "Chris, we were, he was about, or you kind of interrupted us."
Yes.
I there's a novel by John Scalzi. I forget which one it is, but it's one it may be Agent to the Stars, but it's one that's set on contemporary Earth, and he wrote it before cell phones. So after cell phones came in and after telemarketers became a plague that Congress will not stop for some reason, everyone's just gone to screening their calls. The phone rings now. If it's not a recognized phone number in your contacts,
don't answer it.
You don't answer it because it's going to be a telemarketer. And so people have stopped doing this. But back in the day, especially back before cell phones, when you had landlines and you had to run to the phone to answer it, people would run to the phone all the time, no matter what they were doing. And in this John Scalzi novel, you have this alien talking about how humans are so socially dependent and obsessed, they will run to the phone no matter what's happening. Even they will interrupt mating to run to the phone.
Well, that's also before caller ID, so you never knew who was there. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like totally irrational social dependence from the point of view of aliens.
Right.
Which is why answering machines were a good thing.
And that actually kind of recalls what was going on earlier, which was Pike refusing to pick up his communicator, even though it was ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, which I think is kind of funny.
Well, I like, too, that they had an old rotary phone behind it.
Yeah.
And so she says, are you going to pick up the phone?
Yeah, that was good. So Pike has been convinced to go.
You should for your communicator though be able to have a personalized ringtone, so everyone know if it's your communicator that's ringing.
Yeah, that would be actually good. I mean, although can you imagine the ringtones? You could have a Rickroll every time your communicator rings. That would be a fun throwback.
For those who are hard of sight, their sight isn't good. You can actually get where it will say "call from Domenico Bettinelli."
Yeah, you can have it announce it. That would be good too.
And why communicators don't say Admiral April is calling again. Admiral April is calling again.
Well, you've got AIs now. You could have like the equivalent of the S lady on your communicator. I mean, you would think. Anyway, that's all far field. Pike takes the shuttle up to the Enterprise. The shuttle is called the Stamets, which that's a very quick homage to Stamets, who has now gone missing, obviously from their time. And for some reason he takes the shuttle up and then beams aboard the Enterprise as opposed to just docking
we can get the beauty shot of the Enterprise in space dock, which
I appreciate. And it does recall previous like the motion picture beauty shots of the Enterprise in space dock too. So Spock gives him an update on what's going on, including a notation that Pike had requested a transfer aboard of a Lieutenant Kirk. Not that Kirk, but it turns out to be his brother, George Kirk, who's coming aboard in the science division.
Who's going to be killed by a flying scorpion space omelet in a few years.
That's right. And apparently...
Which, by the way, did Samuel Kirk is what they call him. George Samuel Kirk is his name. Did he not look like... what's his name? Guy Fleegman on Galaxy Quest.
I've even
the mustache and everything.
Other people have picked up on that. This morning I saw a little video where someone mashed it up with Galaxy Quest, where you've got at the end Guy coming on the bridge of the Galaxy Quest and mashing that up with George Samuel Kirk coming on and talking to Pike.
Well, he had to have the mustache because in that episode. Operation
Annihilate.
We see his face and he has a mustache, that Sam Kirk has a mustache. So they had to give him a mustache, but it's like, that is not a good mustache on him. He should not have a mustache. But apparently we're going to see Jim Kirk at some point in the second season. Yeah.
Season 2. Yep.
So that'll be fun. The head of security is Lieutenant La'an Noonien Singh. That's a familiar name.
And she should look familiar too for Doctor Who fans. This is Christina Chong, who played the soldier from A Good Man Goes to War, right. The one that ran with the Doctor.
That's where I saw her from. Yeah, she did look familiar. Interesting.
Yep.
By the way, and I have an answer to this, but what's with all the Noonians in Star Trek? Because we've got Khan Noonien Singh, he was the original. Then in the next gen, we had Noonien Soong, who was Data's builder, and now we have La'an Noonien Singh. So what's with all the Noonien Singh songs? Well, it turns out Gene Roddenberry had a friend in the military named Kim Noonien Singh, and it's homages to that friend of Roddenberry's. That's why this keeps cropping up.
Oh, cool. Interesting. Well, at least in the reason this character is Noonien Singh is she's apparently going to be revealed as a descendant.
Yeah, probably Khan.
So,
and there are various things. So they give us her backstory. This is one of the things you look for in episodes of new series is really any series is, but especially new ones, is when they're establishing the ensemble cast, they tend to take an episode and focus on one member of the ensemble cast, so you get to know this person. And this is the La'an Noonien Singh episode.
Yep.
So we learn a lot about who she is and her backstory. She apparently was, as a small child, on a colony ship that was captured by a mysterious race that Starfleet doesn't really know anything about yet, and it's the Gorn. And they took the people from the colony ship, including her and all her family, to a nursery planet that they had, where it's like a nursery for young Gorns that they're presumably hatching out of eggs. And horrific things happen there. She is the only survivor. As part of some kind of ritual, it's like they always let somebody go. They always let the last survivor go. They put them on a space shuttle or something and send them up into space, even though they're not really expecting them to survive. So it's some kind of like ritual with the universe of we always let somebody go. So technically we're not being as bad as we could be here.
Right.
But she saw her planet, her family vivisected, so like dismembered alive and then eaten alive, or used as breeding sacks alive. So presumably they were laying eggs in her relatives, and all of that's really horrific. And so she has a really horrific backstory. She is, another thing they reveal about her is she is very opposed to being sedated. And in this, Dr. Mabenga and Nurse Chapel are producing, and I like this they do some technological improvements over previous series. So previously they would like have Dr. McCoy do surgery on Kirk and Spock to make them look Romulan so they could infiltrate a Romulan ship. Well, now they're establishing they're also doing genetic surgery on people so they can pass a DNA scan. And so they're going to do this DNA procedure and then accelerate the change in body morphology so they look like so that they rapidly develop weird foreheads with spots. And this is a very painful procedure, but La'an refuses to be sedated for it. And so she has some reason she doesn't want to be sedated, presumably connected with maybe they sedated her relatives before they did stuff to them. I don't know, but she really didn't want to be sedated. I like that she is shown as very inventive and capable as a security officer. She thinks her way out of situations. Like at one point, she on the fly invents a ruse and a trap to get them where they need to go. I like how she is portrayed as very intelligent, very competent, and she avoids so far the cliched writing we typically get for security directors, like Tasha Yar and Worf, where they want to blast things at the first opportunity, and all they are is paranoid about threats. And they haven't shown La'an that way. And so I like this better take on that role of security chief.
Well, and they show her where she's looking, she's looking at the Archer sitting there empty, just floating in space, ready to go. I mean, it's all systems green, as they said. And she immediately goes, raise the shields now. And of course, Spock's like, well, there's no reason to. It's like, raise the shields now.
Right.
And of course, they raise the shields in time for the torpedoes to come flying up from the planet. Right. She knew it was a trap.
She's cautious, but she's not overly aggressive.
Kill them all now, Captain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was going to say, it does recall a little bit like Tasha Yar's backstory, which is, Tasha Yar, the security chief who grew up on a failed colony. And that sort of stuff.
We don't have rape gangs here.
Yeah, this is a much better take on that. And of course, we'll get more about her connection to Khan as well, I'm sure, as we go on. So that's interesting.
Well, and we get to learn more about the Gorn. Now, I mean, both of you obviously know more about TOS than I do. There really wasn't a lot of development of Gorn.
There was
Gorn
one episode about the Gorn in the original series, and pretty much nothing since then.
So we get more development of them, and we're supposed to get a Gorn episode in this season.
That would be cool. Yeah. The Gorn have been mentioned a few times, like they were mentioned on Deep Space Nine a few times, but we did get a two-parter. It was the In a Mirror Darkly two-parter in Enterprise, set in the Mirror universe, where a Gorn got on board the Enterprise and evil Archer had to fight it, and they were like they used gravity plating to nail it to the floor. But which is another thing I like, because it's, yes, you would actually use gravity plating to immobilize enemies on a starship.
It is a great way to stop invaders. We have Cadet Uhura at the communications. So we have the origin of Uhura on the Enterprise here.
And she is spoken of as being like a prodigy when it comes to communications, but they don't really flesh out what that means yet.
Yeah. We have, and throughout the episode, we have these moments where Pike gets distracted by visions of his future maimed self. Like as they're about to head out from space dock, he sees his reflection in the screen on his chair, and it's his, maimed face. And it keeps happening. So presumably he needs a nice psych eval and a sit down with a counselor to help deal with this stuff, as opposed to what he's doing. But we are presumably by the end of this episode, he's come to some sort of resolution with that. I mean, I'm sure he's still going to be struggling with it, but it's not going to be as severe.
Yeah, he uses, by the end of the episode, his personal character arc is he's come to accept the idea that he can use the knowledge of his future for good. And it can make him a better captain.
Yep.
Incidentally, I wanted to mention, so we hear a couple of pieces of jargon on the bridge, that one of which I liked, one of which I didn't. So at one point, Pike is asking, and I forget if it's the helmsman or the ops person who answers, but says, how is this system functioning? And we hear it actually a couple times in the episode, but the answer is it's working 5x5. And 5x5 is actual military jargon. It's really applied in communications, which is not, I believe, what it was applied to here. But what the 2 5s stand for, it's a rating on 1 to 5. 5 being the best. And it's used in communications to indicate signal strength and signal clarity. So if you have 2 5s, that means the signal is loud and it is clear. So loud and clear is what it really means. But
I'm hearing you 5x5.
Yeah, right. But I've seen it applied to other systems in TV sci-fi. They do the same thing on Babylon 5. Ivanova will say this system is working 5x5, even if it's not a communication system.
Right.
What I don't like is as he's leaving the bridge, Pike tells the Ortega, the new helmsman, you've got the comm.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh yeah.
and okay, this is not a real phrase.
Yeah.
The phrase is you have the con.
The con.
CONN, short for conning tower. Right. On a ship, which is where it's the lookout. It's so the being in control of the conning tower means you're in charge. But William Shatner could not remember the line, and he would alternate between you have the con and you have the comm. And as a result, we have in this episode Captain Pike saying you have the comm.
I almost could see that being done on purpose.
I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah.
But of course, on TNG, a lot of times you would hear it, you have the bridge. You have the bridge. Is how they would say it.
Right. And con, I've also seen it as con as a shortened for control of the ship. So I've seen that too. Yep. But in any case, comm.
That's probably
is
a folk etymology. Yeah.
Yeah. Comm or command, I think is what they're trying to go for, but no, that's not how it works.
Yeah. The other bit of technology that I really like here, where they were thinking of how would you do this or what could we do that we haven't done before technologically, is they now have incorporated clothing redesign as part of the transporter process. So you don't have to replicate a costume to wear on the planet. The transporter will do that for you. So it's like sliding down the bat pole and magically have your clothes change.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're going to talk about transporters, this will be the time when I'm going to talk about the transporter where they're turning into the magic machine, because now we can transport medication directly into the bloodstream. Come on.
It wasn't even bloodstream. It was like on his eye, literally.
Yeah.
On his eye.
It's just, I think it's a dramatic danger, because when the machine can do literally anything, you are sucking some of the drama out of the script, if the story.
I don't mind it in principle, because I like that they're thinking through how could we use this? What are all the different ways we could use it? My issue is it's inconsistent with original series era transporter technology.
Right.
Because they weren't even doing site-to-site beaming at that point.
Yeah.
That was something that came in with Next Gen. And so I I like that they're thinking it through, but it's inconsistent with what they've previously established for this time period.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that actually where the addition of an emergency medical transporter makes a lot of sense, where you could have a transporter in sick bay for that purpose. If, someone needs to be beamed direct to sick bay,
Right.
they literally can beam them to the transporter in sick bay. And as far as I know, there's nothing in TOS that says it couldn't have been there. They just never showed it.
Right.
Mhm.
I do like the idea of getting medical teams to the point of a problem right away. That's a perfect idea. Probably a damage control transporter too.
And what we're talking about here for folks who haven't seen the episode is because of Spock's weird half Vulcan, half human genetic code, the gene editing they do on him doesn't stick. His natural gene replication process starts to overwrite it with Vulcan DNA or with Vulcan human hybrid DNA, and they need to give him a booster. And so they, at one point, especially in his eye, because he has to do a retinal scan and his retina needs to look like it's made of, whatever the retinas are like on this planet. And so they need to get the booster into his eye specifically. And the transporter chief, who is, I guess,
Kyle.
supposed to be Kyle. I mean, the same Kyle from the series. And in that case, they've race swapped him again. Like, why? But he objects and says the transporter can't do that. And they say, well, make it do it. And so it is at least an untested emergency procedure. The flip side of the argument, by the way, of having a magical device that can accomplish stuff is, the counter argument is that can accelerate the plot. And that's like why in modern Doctor Who they brought back the sonic screwdriver, because if you've only got 45 minutes to tell this story, you need tools that you can use to quickly accomplish things that otherwise you'd have to have a whole sequence of how are we going to do this.
Right. But it's going to be the inconsistency. So that's good.
Well, and they had to have the running through the hallway sequence, which was funny. It was so much fun.
Right.
Nurse Chapel chasing after the guy who escaped was it was a fun scene and everything.
Yeah, with a great payoff, because so they've had to beam up these two aliens that they're impersonating, and they have them sedated so that they won't violate the Prime Directive by letting the aliens have knowledge. But the sedation doesn't work, and the two aliens wake up almost simultaneously, and one of them gets out of sickbay and goes running down the hallway. And
like you would if you found yourself on an alien spaceship.
Well,
get
maybe.
Me out of here.
and Dr. Mabenga turns to Nurse Chapel and says, like, Delta Scorpii 7. So apparently they've done this before.
Right.
and she goes running after the guy while he gets new sedatives ready or something. And she's chasing the guy down the hallway, and he runs into an elevator, and the elevator doors close, and Lieutenant or Cadet Uhura is standing next to him, and she just looks over and says, "Hi." And and then when the elevator doors open and they come out, Uhura is talking to him about a game that they play on his planet called Tag Ball, and apparently she's been listening to the broadcasts from their planet. They never say this, but apparently she's been listening to their broadcast, so she's been learning about their culture, and she's talking to him about, I heard like the best tag ball game ever was Cone Rockets versus Boom Shield. What did you think? And he's totally set at ease by all this sports ball talk. Yeah. And so she was able to calm him down, whereas Nurse Chapel was freaking him out by chasing him. But Uhura has now calmed him down, and as they walk out of the elevator, Nurse Chapel has used the emergency medical transporter to get where they're going, and she just reaches over and sedates him again.
The amazing thing about that is on Kylie 279, the tag ball championship team had Tom Brady as their quarterback still, which is just amazing that he's still playing at 250 years old. I'm just kidding. So
Could only wish.
I want to jump back a bit to when they left space dock. Pike left the bridge, left Akin to Ortegas, and went to his quarters, which is awesome. I love the captain's quarters that they designed on the different ships, like Discovery and now on the Enterprise. They all have little fireplaces, which is fantastic, and lots of wood. But they have this. He has this chat with Spock, talking about how experiencing his death, and I was thinking he's experienced his death, which will give him an interesting frame of reference when Spock goes through it too. He can recall that Pike did it too, if you remember in Star Trek Voyage Home. when Spock and McCoy have this conversation, Spock says, well, you haven't had this frame of reference, a common frame of reference on this. So I just thought that was kind of, I don't think it was intentional, but I just thought it was a funny little connection there. But Pike,
I do want to mention, since you brought it up, the design of the Enterprise. I like this so much more than any other ship that they have made for New Trek.
Yes.
It's so much more light. It's so much more open. It's more colorful.
Yeah.
I think it looks it's the best design, I think, personally, for the interior than any other ship they've had so far.
I think they spent a lot of time getting it right, because this is the Enterprise. This isn't Discovery or Stargazer or any other ship. This is the most important ship in all of Star Trek. And if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. This was the first, the Enterprise original, no A, no B, no bloody C, as Scotty says.
Yep.
So yeah, this is the one. And so I'm really glad they did a good job with it. So Pike and Spock have this conversation. And how will this knowledge of death affect Pike? That's what he's wondering. Will it make me hesitant? Will it make me reckless? Because you think about it, if he knows how he's going to die, quote unquote, in 10 years, well, I'm not going to die today.
Risks now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. And Spock has this line where he tells him, suffering can be transformed into insight. That's kind of what he's saying, to Pike about his suffering with this knowledge. Is you remember that suffering can be transformed into insight, which I think is an interesting concept that for Christians, for whom suffering is transformative.
Almost Christian, not quite. Of course, we would say that suffering can be used for redemption, for our, to aid in our salvation. But still, I mean, it's closer.
Yeah, I kind of thought that was an interesting, and I'll be interested to see where they take it. That and if they can make something of that in future episodes.
It's interesting. It puts me in mind of an incident that happened more than 20 years ago, when it was after my wife died and I moved to California and started working for Catholic Answers, and I took a call from a guy who was a former Protestant pastor who had left the ministry under a cloud for things he had done. Not as bad as you may be thinking, but he had left the ministry under a cloud, and it was a painful experience for him. And I talked to him over the phone, and it apparently was something he found very helpful, because he then later, I guess, he called back and talked to a different Catholic Answers employee, and that employee came to me and said, your previous conversation with him really, really helped. And he said, Jimmy Akin must really have suffered, because he was so understanding of what I was going through. And I hadn't really thought of it, but I guess, my wife had died. I had been suffering a lot. And I guess that, sure, I guess that's given me insight. So suffering can become insight. It's given me insight into the situation when other people are suffering. But it hadn't occurred to me, if I meet a kind person, to infer that the kind person must have great suffering in their background.
Well, when you think about it, the word compassion literally means to suffer with. And
etymologically.
Etymologically, right. So it's kind of an interesting concept that we've assumed into our society, into our way of being, which is that we suffer with others. That is compassion.
Yeah. So from the sublime to the ridiculous, when they beam down, Spock's first line is, "Captain, where are my pants?" And in the broader camera angle, we see that short pants are apparently common on this planet.
Maybe it's like well, and the outback is Australia, where they wear short pants.
And that was after Pike said, "It's always an alley." Why is it always an alley?
Yeah, right.
Well, there's a good reason for that. It's an alley, so you don't beam down in the middle of a public square and get seen by people.
Yeah,
of course. So, so they've got to beam down to this planet that has no space infrastructure yet has warp capability, and that's when they find out, as you mentioned in the recap, that they have a warp bomb. The conflict here is that if the planet hasn't developed warp drive, then what they're calling General Order 1, they don't call it the Prime Directive yet at this point in the episode. General Order 1 applies. Then they're not to interfere, and so they're not supposed to get involved what's going on the planet, which then the question is have they already contaminated the planet by having their ship and their crew get beamed down and all that sort of stuff and captured of the other ship. Nevertheless, the Pike says, I don't care. We're going down. We're not leaving our people behind. And this is when they go to sick bay. We see Dr. Mabenga, which we saw him in the original series. He in the episode of Private Little War. That's his appearance there.
They've culture swapped him because even though he was a black guy in the original series, which was great, but he didn't have an African accent, and they've now given him one. It implied he's from Kenya.
Right. And then we have Christine Chappell. Who,
by the way, I was in connection with that. One concept from the original series that never made it on screen, but that I loved and would love to see them use in this, since they've introduced Uhura, is the idea that she was from the United States of Africa.
Yeah.
So she was, and that, makes sense in the Star Trek future. You have the European Union becoming basically one nation. You have North America you basically got all the national boundaries ended up falling. They still exist, but not as separate nations. So like Riker can be from Alaska. And he identifies as an American rather than a Canadian, but so the old geographical districts exist, but they somehow gradually merged under single governments, and having a United States of Africa would make a lot of sense at some stage of history. Yep. So the idea was Uhura was from the other USA, and I thought that was a really cool concept. I hope they bring that up.
Yeah, I do too. So we have Christine Chappell, who we're told is on loan to Starfleet, and she's a geneticist, which actually fits to the original backstory. I mean, Christine Chappell wasn't just your average everyday nurse in the original series. She had a scientific background, and she went to space looking for Roger Corby, if you remember from What a Little Girl's Made Of. But she has this scientific background, so that's actually a pretty good connection there. And they do the gene therapy, and to beam down, we have Kyle. Let's see. So you mentioned Lieutenants Noonien Singh thinking fast, using the two scientists to break into the warp bomb building, which I know it's a Star Trek thing. They always do this. Why are the super top secret facilities with very important military things always in the middle of the city and not like in the middle of the desert like Groom Lake is?
I was gonna say they're equivalent to Montana, you mean?
right. But anyway, this is what they do.
Budgetary reasons.
Right.
Yep.
So they eventually make their way into the building, getting past security. I have to say the Kylie security uniforms have really cool hats. Like funky hats.
Didn't notice. Okay.
Yeah, take a look at it when next time you see a picture from the season, the episode. They get number one out, and she says the 0 point with the whole explanation. The 0 point with Discovery, the point where Discovery went into the wormhole to the future, was just 1 light year from the planet, and so much was happening in the sky that the people of the planet were able to detect the warp signature and reverse engineer a matter antimatter reactor from that. And I'm thinking, a light year is still pretty far away. And what is
you
it?
Said less than a light year.
Less than a light year.
Okay, well,
because otherwise we'd have a time problem. If it's only been 3 months, the light wouldn't have gotten there from the event yet. Much less would they have had time to build anything.
Okay. Yeah, but even then, I just feel like how much could they have gleaned from that in 3 months to reverse engineer a matter antimatter reactor from something you saw outside your solar system?
Well, the lesson is just Discovery is extremely destructive, and it's evil and corrupts everything it's within a light year of.
That's right. So we should forget it. So
the only thing I could figure, of course, this is headcanon, is that they already had the knowledge of matter antimatter. Yeah, I mean, they already know how to do that. They maybe even knew how to create antimatter, but then how to control it.
Yeah.
But how to control it in a way that could produce the warp bomb, the matter antimatter bomb.
Yeah, this is a scientific flaw because we can make a matter-antimatter reactor now. I mean, we have them, but they're just we don't use them for that purpose because it takes way more energy to make antimatter,
right?
Than
you get from it.
Than you get from colliding it with matter. But we have matter-antimatter collisions all the time in our particle accelerators. We just use them for research rather than power production.
Right.
So the trick would be finding a cheap way, meaning an energy inexpensive way to make antimatter. But once you can do that, using it to build a reactor, that's simple. Just keep the antimatter in a magnetic bottle, and then when you want the power, you either take some out of the bottle or turn off the bottle, and boom, you've got your power.
Right.
Yep.
So then we have Pike, who's decided not to leave the planet under these conditions of contamination. He says, "Screw General Order 1."
He speaks for all of the fans everywhere when he says, "Screw General Order number 1." That's what the fans are always thinking. And for once, they hung a lantern on it and let someone say it.
And then he approaches one of the people from Kylie and says, "Take me to your leader," which is good. Nice.
I like that look, too. He's just kind of like, okay, I've got to say it.
Well, because, he's a classic sci-fi fan who's watching, the Day the Earth Stood Still. So the local leader
may even have that line in This Island Earth. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Oh, yeah. It's the leader of this local country, nation state, whatever. She says she's not interested in this high-minded rhetoric when she's facing a bloody civil war. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you do realize that setting off the equivalent of, multi megaton nukes is a bad idea. Like, this is not going to end well for you, but
I like her line. She says, after his high-minded rhetoric, she says, "You've given me a proverb. A proverb is less useful than a big stick."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. And so he decides to force her hand, which is.
Oh, yeah. And the way he does it is great because another nice thinking through the technology, they've got Siri on their communicators. So even though his and Spock's communicators are laying on her desks, Pike just says, "Emergency transmission, Pike to Enterprise, get down into the atmosphere."
Right.
Yep. So they're voice activated communicators.
Which is a great advance in the technology. It makes sense.
Well, and it makes it. How many times do you see, even up into Voyager, where the communicators are literally sitting 5 feet away from them on a table, and they can't just voice activate them,
right? Or they get it on their chest, where they could activate it voice that way too. And so the appearance of an alien spaceship over their capital city, presumably, causes everyone to stop what they're doing, which is, when you think about it, if that were to happen, if alien spaceships were to materialize over Washington, D.C. or New York City or Moscow or whatever, everyone would stop because there's a new thing that has changed everything. And so I like that.
Everyone is like looking up going, "I want one. When is it on Amazon so I can order it?"
Yeah, exactly.
Take me with you. So Pike ends up showing the people from Kylie that their future based on Earth's past, the second Civil War that started with the divisions of 2021, which then became the Eugenics War and then just became World War III, which is a bit of a change of the timeline.
That's retconning because the Eugenics Wars happened in the 90s.
Yeah. So they're retconning it a bit.
And they kind of, when we talk about Picard, which I think you'll have heard.
You will have heard it because we're talking about this first.
They show at the end, they show Adam Soong with the
Khan project.
Khan.
Yeah.
But it's a funding proposal from 1996.
Yep.
Right. But it's So
they're fitting it in a timeline.
They're messing with the timeline. Some people have pointed out that the footage that we see of the civil disturbances on Kylie include footage from Ukraine's Kiev's Maidan Square from the 2014 uprisings. So there's a Ukrainian flag.
Timely.
Yes. That's a bit of an error there because it's supposed to be on Kylie. But then there's the footage of division on Earth, which includes some of the January 6th footage, which is.
Yep.
I want to compliment Anson Mount's acting in this scene because this is a very hard kind of scene to deliver where it's so easy to come off as arrogant and preachy when you're delivering this kind of Star Trek rhetoric. And he manages to humanize it. In fact, right from the very first line, he beams down into the middle of these predictably squabbling. I mean, we see this aerial shot looking down at the floor of the building where they're meeting, and we've got the two alien leaders at podiums kind of close to each other, and they're gesticulating wildly and clearly angry, as the aides behind them. And it's like, okay, this is a very stereotypical way of communicating. These people are irrationally hostile to each other. And then Anson Mount beams down in the middle of it all, and he just looks at the two leaders and says, "Hi."
Almost bashful.
Yeah, excuse me.
He's almost bashful that he kind of snuck in.
But that was great. That was a great moment.
Then we have, he tells them, "I'm here to remind you of the power of possibility. And until the very end, life is to be lived gloriously, because unto the last moment, the future is what we make it." And that's really his answer to his own internal conflict, as in addition to what he's telling them here, is life is to be lived. No matter how much time we have, whether we know it's the moment it ends or not, you've got to live every moment of life until its end. And I think that's really the Star Trek ethos at its best is, go explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations, find what there is to find. It is a wonderful universe. Live in it, enjoy it, be kind to one another in it, and do the good things in it. And I think that's compatible with our own Christian worldview.
Ride horses on snowy wind farms.
I would totally do that.
And I do like the way he presented it, because it wasn't the bombastic, Kirk speech or something like that. It was almost humble, because he mentions, a friend of mine reminded me about this, and he kind of smiles thinking about his conversation with Spock.
Yes.
Very, very simple, very humble, but very powerful. Yeah. I mean, very well done.
I like it. And I think, I agree. It is Anson Mount's delivery that makes the difference in this, from being, sort of arrogant to a little more humble and heartfelt. And I think it makes, I mean, I know we keep slagging on Discovery, but if this were delivered by any of the Discovery actors, it would have a whole different arrogant tone.
Think of the Lower Decks episode where Boimler was part of the group that's training to be bridge crew, and they're doing their speeches, and then there's an emergency, and all they do is stand and speechify. Right. It would have been like that instead.
Yes. So we have a few closing scenes where we have one scene where Pike confronts Noonien Singh for La'an. Sorry, I should just say La'an. For not.
Yeah, but get the glottal stop in there. It's not La'an, it's La'an.
La'an, yes, like Hawaii. So he confronts her for not trusting him. Like she wants him to trust her, but he says, "Well, you need to trust me too."
And what that's about is she had already met Number One on a previous mission. Number One was the one who found her after the Gorn set her adrift. And so she has a history with Number One that she didn't mention to Pike. And so when they get to where Number One is being held on the planet, he starts introducing him. It's like, "Oh yeah, we know each other." And it's like, "You didn't tell me that." It's like, I'll tell you later.
Right. She was afraid that her past association would have meant that Pike wouldn't have trusted her on the mission. And that's where he says, "Well, that you should have trusted me then. If you wanted me to trust you in that, you should have trusted me." So then we have Lieutenant Sam Kirk coming aboard. I should have mentioned earlier, the Sam Kirk that we see in original series Operation Annihilate is played by Bill Shatner with a mustache, which is why the mustache is important in that.
Mustache, a little bit of makeup to make him look just a little bit older.
Yeah.
Just from the pictures I've seen. So
I'm sure this just the mustache itself has a fan lineage. And so you had to have it. That's why.
And he's assigned to life sciences. So Pike tells him that Spock is his boss. So presumably we'll see him in future episodes, and he will be one of the blue shirts who doesn't die, because his appointment with death is in Operation Annihilate.
That's right. And then we have a scene on Starbase One with Admiral Apel, who basically tells them how they got out of the violating General Order 1, which the Federation High Court is really now going to really make, or Federation Council is really making important by calling it the Prime Directive. And Pike kind of waves it away like, oh, no one will love us. That'll never stick as a name, which is funny. So.
Yeah. And the rationale legally is the Federation Council can't acknowledge the event that happened with Discovery. And so they can't publicly acknowledge how the planet was technologically corrupted.
Yeah.
And that means that that they can't explain why the planet was not qualified for being warp capable, and why they shouldn't, why the Prime Directive they can't legally explain why the Prime Directive should apply to the planet,
Right.
and therefore they can't establish that Pike and crew violated the Prime Directive.
Right. So that's where we end the episode. And
well, we also get shots of people doing stuff, including the Anar Andorian chief engineer coming aboard named Hemmer, who we'll get to meet next week.
Right. And so final thoughts on the first episode of Strange New Worlds, Father Cory?
I mean, I really enjoy it. I thought for, a first episode, this was a very strong first episode. I've seen people online kind of complain it's kind of weak. Well, yeah, it's a first episode. It's going to be weak. I got a kick out of the scene where, Spock it's painful for him, this DNA detransformation, if you will, going back to his original DNA. And the pain is unbearable. And then just as they're coming up to the security guards, just screams and everybody's looking at him.
Yeah.
And then
that's a powerful scream.
I'm better now. I'm better now.
That was good. I just, as you were saying, like first episodes are weak. As first episodes of a series go, this might be one of the best from my point of view. So,
for Star Trek, definitely.
Star Trek,
yeah, I can't think of a better off the top of my head. I mean, original series didn't really have one. Animated series is animated series. Next Gen's beginning was terrible. Deep Space Nine's was better, but still not great. Enterprises, Voyagers was who cares. Enterprises was who cares. Discovery. I mean, we all know where that went. But this was for a first episode, this may be the most enjoyable one I've seen.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun.
Any other thoughts?
Other thing I wanted to mention at the end, they had a memorial of April Nochefora. She was a producer on both Discovery and Strange New Worlds and died within the past year of cancer.
Oh, okay.
And so she was involved in the production of the fourth season Discovery and this first season Strange New Worlds, and developed cancer during that.
Oh, okay. All right.
I figured she was someone who had died, but I didn't know who she was.
Yeah. So, Jimmy, thoughts on this episode?
So I like how at the beginning of the episode, Pike says a few times when people asked him what's got him down, he says it's classified. And that's true. I mean, he says that to Captain Patel. He says that to Admiral April. Captain Patel says to him, "I've got a deeper security clearance than you." And it's like, yeah, you do know how compartmentalized programs work, right?
Right.
Just having a high level security clearance doesn't mean you are granted access to this program or to this event.
Right.
I really liked at one point we get Anson Mount now doing the classic Star Trek opening monologue.
Yes.
And to seek out new life and new civilizations, all that. And that was very effective. Yes. Spock, when he's talking to T'Pring, mentions that Ceylon has seas of liquid mercury. And my first thought was, well, then humans better never go there because mercury is extremely toxic to humans. And will get in through your skin. And so element 80 is one you really kind of want to steer clear of. Amazingly, it used to be used as a medicine. Because it's toxic and your body will attempt to expel it. And so they used it for various conditions.
Reasons.
And like, wow, but it doesn't all get expelled, and it causes nerve damage, and it is really bad stuff. So don't go to the beach on Ceylon is what I'm saying.
Right.
There's also a reference in the Starbase One, which is apparently set around Jupiter. They have these forests under domes, and Pike gives La'an a kind of speech about how the forests got there, and I think there's an intentional reference here to a 1972 movie called Silent Running, which was about forests under domes in space and why the environmental disaster that led to him being put up there and what happens with them. And then at the end, they give us the star date of 2259.42. And I'm going, but you said it was in the 1700s at the beginning of the episode. What's going on?
Right.
So I want closure on that, but they didn't give it to us.
Apparently the year is 2259. So
well, fine, but
that makes that
the beginning of the episode wasn't in the 1700s when the U.S. was still 13 colonies.
Right. And the original series had star dates in the thousands to 2000. So who knows? That's what I was saying. It's like it's frustrating, but we have to blame the original series for messing that up in the first place. All right. Well, so I've given you my thoughts on it too. I think it's a great first outing. I've always loved Anson Mount as Captain Pike. I think the rest of the crew so far, I'm liking them. I like the ship, and the writing and drama have been really good. And I'm really looking forward to going back to what we've always loved, the original classic Trek style of storytelling. And I'm looking forward to getting much, much more of that from the series. This is looking good. All right, so let's wrap it up there. This has been a long episode, so we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Nicholas C., Wesley B., Andrew K., Janelyn M., and Kevin T. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We would love to hear what you thought of Strange New Worlds. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can send an email to trek@sqpn.com or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Strange New Worlds called Children of the Comet. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and it's classified.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest, and remember, until the very end, life is to be lived gloriously, because until the last moment, the future is what we make of it.